to give me their business cards and things. So, but then yeah, so I saw lots of different editors, and eventually I got a main editor at Young Jump, and it was kind of cool because, well, the thing is, like, he liked my drawing, but he said that he didn't like my story. So I spent a lot of time writing different stories for him, like not finishing the mangas, just doing the roughs and getting his feedback, and I kept changing things. And honestly, it started getting really difficult for me because I found that there was he didn't like my stories, but I did, and the stories that he wanted me to write wasn't really the kind of stuff that I wanted to write. And like I remember the main thing that kind of sealed it for me was the like toward the end I finally I did this following his advice. I did this one manga, I'm saying like a rough manga, right? And around that same time, I had this person at my school, this teacher that I really respected, who really understood what I was going for with a lot of my other work, and he's kind of like an old school type of guy. Like he likes how manga was 10 years ago, and honestly, I think I do too. He said like the last 10 years has been really stagnant because like I don't know how many of you know what moe-k is, but there's just a certain like popular style that's kind of come that's kind of had a big boom, and now every company knows that if you do that style, you're gonna make probably 3 to 4 times more than you would if you didn't. So every company just keeps doing that, and no one really wants to take risks in other areas. And so like he just talks about how like he really felt like it's getting kind of stagnant in the last 10 years. And I think a lot of my work, he kind of understood where I was going with it, and how it was kind of more, it's kind of I was more like a risky type of stuff. It wasn't like, I'm not gonna say not like risque in that way, but it's not like the mainstream type of storylines. It's not the mainstream type of characters. It's not the mainstream type of settings. Like another big thing is like I'm really big on fantasy. I love fantasy settings, and I'm talking about like high fantasy, like because like old school like TSR D&D type of like like dragons and knights and all that type of stuff. That's the type of stuff I like Record of Lotus Wars and things like that. And apparently that's kind of a risky thing to do in the current manga market. Like I remember I went to, was it Morning? I think that whatever the one that publishes Vagabond. I think that's Morning. But like I remember going there and they were like, you really shouldn't do fantasy because like if you're doing a real world setting, and once again I'm talking about like these high fantasy settings, but if you're doing like a real world setting, you just show Shibuya, which is like a place in Tokyo, and the reader already knows where you are. They have the whole background of what the world is like and everything. But with fantasy, you have to establish the entire world, which is a lot harder to do. And I mean that makes sense. It definitely would, I guess, be harder. But I just didn't really have an interest in drawing like real world stuff. It's just not something. It's not part of like what I like. And also like I had another issue where like I found like I tended to, my drawing style is more in tune to seinen manga, which is the more like young adult type manga. But my story plots were like my story scenarios, I guess, like the sort of fantasy stuff that I put in was more like a shonen manga, so there was kind of a dissonance there. So just to keep this short, there was just a lot of difficulties I had with getting the type of stories I wanted to tell to match with what was popular now. And I remember that at the end, I finally got this story following the editor's advice, and I just really didn't like it. I was looking at him like I don't know, I mean I guess this will work. But then I brought that to my teacher who I respected at that time. And he looked at it and he says, like, this isn't manga. What is this? You could do so much better than this. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right. But, like, I don't know, this is what they want me to do. And so I brought that into, I brought that into the editor. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's gotten so much better. And I just remember my feeling right then is like this stuff, I'm drawing this thing that I don't really get what's good about it. And yet I'm being told that it's good, that it's better than what I did before. And that's kind of when I realized, like, this is going to be hard, because it's going to be hard for me to draw stuff that I don't really understand. That if I don't like it, then how can I expect other people to like it, basically? So like that was kind of a difficulty, and so like I could have. I mean, obviously, I could have kept working. I could have went to a different place. The other sort of thing is that Young Jump was a weekly manga, which means that there's probably a high turnaround. You'd probably have to do a lot of work to keep yourself going there, because there's two different types of magazines. There's another thing you might want to look at. There's Gekkan and Shukan. Gekkan is a monthly magazine, and Shukan is a weekly magazine. Monthly magazines publish once every month. Weekly ones publish once every week. So. Young Jump is a weekly magazine, which means that you would have to it would be publishing every week, which means there's high turnaround. And I was kind of a slower drawer. Like, I know there's people in my class that could draw a manga page in like 4 hours, maybe 3 or 2 even. For me, every page was like probably 6 to 10 hours. Like, because I put a lot of like detail into my work. But yeah, so those are the first two. Was that 2 or 3 reasons? I'm not sure, that I started kind of getting turned off to it. But the last reason, and this is probably the biggest one, was that you don't receive a visa for being a manga artist in Japan. So like, I was living in Japan with a student visa, and that student visa was going to end when I finished school. And unless you are selling a lot and have become established enough where you can sponsor your own visa, you don't get a visa for working as a manga artist. The reason being is that if you work at a company, you're an employee of that company, and they sponsor you for a visa, and you could get a working visa. Manga artists aren't exactly employees. Manga artists don't work at the editor's office or anything like that. They are more like freelance workers, maybe even contract. Mostly have contract or freelance. But basically, you're not officially part of that editor's office. You know, you're outside. And so that means that unless they really, really, really want you, you're probably not going to find a company that's going to sponsor you for a visa. And because it costs them money and a lot of different things there, and there's risks involved with that, and I don't even know if legally they can, since you're not an actual employee. I think you have to be in Japanese they call it seishain, which is like an official employee. Because as an outside worker, as like a contract worker or like freelance worker, it's I think it's a whole different category. So here I was, like, my second year of manga, and I'm thinking about, like, I could keep working at this. I could try to just give up all the stuff that I want to do and just do what the editor wants me to do for now until I get established, which is one thing. Like, once you get established, then you get more freedom, so you could do what you want to do after that. Or I could, but even if I did that, I'm not Japanese. I need to have a visa to be here. If you get married or something, there's other ways to stay here. But if you're just a single guy living in Japan, you need to have that sort of security. And so for me, I didn't have that, because even if I did keep working at it, at first I thought once you got the tanto, then that was it, you were set. But no, like, generally you get a tanto and it still takes about a year or so to get published. And then even after you're published, it still might take another year to get like a series, And this whole time you're not getting paid for that, I mean, you might get paid when you get published, but I mean, like, the year leading up to when you get published, like you gotta think about this, like, you're taking your manga to all these different places, and you're not getting paid for all those drawings you're making, and you're not getting paid when you get published the first time. You're not really getting any real money until you get a series. And so, like, that, if you have the sort of time and the financial freedom, and also you don't have issues with visas and stuff, then it's probably worth it going that way. But if you don't have that, it's kind of a risk. It's kind of a big risk, because you're investing a lot without getting a lot of return at a good rate. So this is getting too long. So I might actually split this into 2 videos. I don't know. But so, like, basically that's the reason why I eventually decided, like, I really like drawing manga, but I think this is not something I'm just gonna have to do as a hobby. And as for my work, I think I'm going to switch to gaming. And so that's why I kind of went to, I did my last year of school, I switched to a game design. I did game design a little bit in my first year too, but I switched to it full time. And so I spent the last year just working on game design, and then started looking for a gaming company. And if you guys are interested, I could go into the experience of getting into a gaming company, because if for those who don't know, I am working full time now as a game designer, and so I could go into details about how that worked out. But yeah, I don't want to discourage you. If you want to do manga, go for it. I'm just telling you that there are a lot of challenges you gotta keep in mind. And for me, I found that it just wasn't worth it for me personally. I remember when I first went to school, they told you if you don't love manga, then don't do it. And I remember that time I was like, well, yeah, of course I love manga. That's why I'm here, you know. But afterwards, I started thinking about it more, and I started to really realize what they meant by that. And they mean really love it, where you can't not draw manga, you can't not read manga. And that's the other thing too, is you have to like manga as a whole, not just drawing it. For me, it's I like drawing manga, and I like a number of manga out there, but probably maybe 90% of the market of what's out there I don't really care for. And I think that was a sort of a weak point for me, because if you're going to become a manga artist, especially in the market as it is right now, you really have to like and love that market and be able to do the type of stories that the market likes and what they want to see. And you really have to be where you can't not draw. You can't go a month without reading the latest manga or anything like that. And for me, when I started thinking about it that way, I realized that, and I'm sorry that this is getting long, but I think these are mostly fairly important points. But for me, I thought about it, and I realized that I actually can go a month or so without learning about the most recent manga or anime. You know, there are mangas and animes I really like, but I don't really know a lot of the recent stuff that's going on. I don't really follow the market that well. And when I really thought about it, I was probably more in the gaming area, because for me, I can't really go a month without playing games, or at least learning about what the newest games are and stuff. And that's a huge big interest for me. And when I really thought about it, I've been doing manga recently, but games I've been making since I was a little kid. I never had programming skills, so I didn't make actual video games, but I made I made games with paper, you know, paper tabletop type games, since I was 10, or maybe even younger. Because I remember I loved video games, but I couldn't program, so I would make video game like paper games. And it'd be really too hard to explain how it works, and maybe I'll make another video about that one day. But I have all these papers from since I was 8, that are all these detailed games that I was trying to come up with since I was a kid. And so I kind of started to realize when you come to that question, what do you love? What can you not do? And for me, the answer was not in manga. It was more in the gaming creative field. And so I think that's a question you have to ask yourself. Do you seriously love manga, and not just love your manga, but love manga and what the manga market is now, and love what you would be doing as a manga artist, and just can you not imagine yourself not doing manga? Is that your number one option? And actually, not even number one option, but is that the only way you think you would be happy with yourself? Basically, it's take it that seriously, because it's a risky business. And I mean, if you have the freedom to take those risks, I mean, it's perfectly fine to do that for the time being. Age is another big issue, because for me, I was approaching 30 years old when I was studying manga, and a lot of people, they would tell you if you don't see yourself on that path to become a manga artist by the time you're 24 or so, you probably should stop. And you know, I'm not gonna say I agree with that, but because I think that there are definitely good exceptions, but there is some merit to it, because you don't have, when you're the way the system works in Japan, people who are trying to become manga artists, they're still dependent. You know, they aren't paying their own rent. They aren't having to work full-time jobs. They're generally people who are like drawing on the weekends, or like when they get home from school or whatever. Like a lot of them are still students. A lot of them are like they're in like those mangakos, like the school that I was at, but their parents are paying for it. Their parents have gotten like a apartment for them and everything, and they have just tons of free time just to like draw and draw and draw, and they don't need to have to go out and work to get money. And that was completely different than my situation. And I was seeing that more and more while I was in school, and I was so jealous of my friends, because like I would have to go and work like 2 or 3 jobs to pay my rent, and then stay up all night drawing a manga to bring into the editor the next week or something. And my friends, they would just go home and play video games for like 12 hours, and then they would draw manga a little bit, and then sleep until noon the next day and stuff. And it's like they like hardly any of them worked, and those that worked only worked like maybe 2 to 3 days a week and stuff. So like, and I was really jealous of that. But like honestly, I think that's sort of like how the system is, because because that's how it is, because there's so many people who have such freedom with their time. The manga companies in Japan, they don't need to pay you a lot up front. They could just sit back, give you nothing, but well, they'll give you advice, but they don't give you any like financial stuff until you seriously impress them. And then once you've impressed them, then they start giving you financial. They actually start paying you and things like that. But like, just so you know, that's how it works. You're not gonna get money for a long while probably, unless you're just like super genius manga artist or something. And that goes into a whole different thing, as if you're more established outside of Japan before you come here. But yeah, I've talked long enough. I hope that stuff was useful for you. And let me know like where you want me to go with this in the future. I think I will also still do some videos about the basics about how to draw manga. I'm not going to talk too much about style, because I don't really have a particularly popular style anyways, but I will talk to you about the specific things that you have to know. Like any manga artist has to know, like how to do the background lines, or like how to do the spacing for the coma. What the hell is a coma in English? Panels. Yeah, how thick to make the lines on your panels. How to use tone, how to shade in different areas, different like techniques for the background effects and things like that. Like there's stuff that anyone has to know regardless of what your style is, and I think I'd like to go into that. But then also, since I am working full-time as a game designer, I'd like to switch to some gaming stuff too. So if you're interested in learning about how to get gaming work, I could go into that area as well. And also since I mostly do digital illustration for my work now, I'll go into some more digital illustration stuff in the future as well. Okay, that's all for today. Since it's like 40 minutes, I probably will switch this into 2 videos. But thank you, and see you again next time. Yoroshiku.